Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about the virus and America's reopening baby steps, the human cost of the shutdown, and the virus and America, were we duped? And I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth. America Can We Talk is sponsored by GC Works, a Dallas-based company performing advanced technology research in the oil and gas industry.
Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America Can We Talk, and to today's First Five. In the first five today, I want to talk about the reopening baby steps, and I really do mean baby steps. I'm going to start with the great state of Texas, where I live. I love Texas, and I'm very, as you might imagine, very involved in politics, very involved with all sorts of people who are, committed to conservative ideas, the Republican Party's ideas, and we have in Texas a lot of energy around the idea of freedom, of being self-reliant. Texas prides itself, the can-do American spirit. That's us. That's who we are. They're very much of a commitment to this idea of hard work. And the way we built our Texas economy was by enticing people to come here to work. We always pride ourselves on, low taxes, limited government, limited regulation. It's a can-do working environment. And in this environment, in the great state of Texas, we are in, as the whole country is, of course, we are in the coronavirus shutdown, economy devastated mode. That's where we are. And we've been here for a while. I mean, the coronavirus, the real shutdown, I guess, maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, where at least in my county and many counties, you're really supposed to stay home all the time and only travel for essential reasons. All essential businesses or non-essential businesses are shut down. And yet we finally got from President Trump the signal we talked about a couple of days ago, the signal, hey, we've got to be thinking about opening up. And we had the, guidelines, not rules, not regulations and laws, just guidelines from Washington, which basically said, we're going to get back to work, or we're going to here are guidelines to help you decide when you get ready to get back to work. We had in Texas, where we would always say, we're number one state for liberty. We're the number one. We're the, pro-America, hardworking, heartland America idea. And we have in Texas, the best that could happen was a statement from our governor on this past Monday, which was kind of a statement saying, I don't really have a plan. I don't know what we're going to do. He put a commission together. So he's got a group of donors mostly. So it's a group of donors, a group of people who, are successful in business. And I guess that's a good thing. But it's like the governor passed off so they're going to come up with a plan. And in the meantime, by the way, says he, here are a bunch of jobs that are open or places you can go look for jobs. It was honestly, for especially a Republican governor in a state like Texas, a very disappointing response to what came out of Washington. This idea, we got to get America back to work. So the governor took a lot of heat, and I think maybe they'll start to change course next week, because I think the pushback has been amazing, and really kind of surprising. But this is it seems like for all the time we've known we're in this shutdown, and we know that the industries have collapsed, we know that jobs have collapsed, and small businesses have collapsed. And we had in Texas, which in other places in the country doesn't matter as much, but in Texas, which is built on oil, the economy, the well-being, the just prosperity of Texas is built on oil. We had the oil futures opening, it's a per barrel price of a negative number. I think it was negative $37. I mean, it's unprecedented, never happened before, unfathomable. And so our oil market has collapsed. And this was actually something that former Governor Perry and former Secretary Perry had warned in this country. We cannot have the Texas oil industry collapse. We need energy, and we need the oil industry to be strong, and it is just a mess. And so I will say, just great disappointment that Texas wasn't really ready for a more jump in, do something, not just form a committee to go talk about what to do sometime, but get going. We don't have months and months for a committee to meet and think of a plan and then talk to some other group of people and then revise the plan. This should have been happening inside the governor's mansion, should have been happening inside Austin every day since the shutdown started. Every day since we realized how serious it was. So very disappointing. And honestly, I don't recall in all my time on radio and on doing this show, 5+ years, I've ever been so disappointed in a Republican administration. So I think that there will be some consequences. I think people are pretty unhappy and people will hear about it. But other states did better, and actually some, even within Texas, some local jurisdictions did better. Here in Dallas County, we're still in a treading water mode. We still have the county commissioner's court, one faction of the court trying to push to have the county stay shut down in place like we are through the end of May. And this is in a state, by the way, to be clear, in the entire state of Texas, of 29 million people, we just crossed the threshold of having 500 people die from coronavirus. I don't mean that 500 people's lives don't matter. I do mean statistically that is crazy that we're doing this. In Dallas County, Dallas County is a big, robust, busy place. It's a popular place to live. Dallas County is. And in this county, we have just crossed having 60 people pass away. And yet our county is shut down and the county commissioner's court is looking toward doing that more. And that's really what I want to focus on today. I'm going to do touch on a few more states before I wrap up the first 5. But I really want to focus on today the idea of what it means to stand up for the reopening of the American economy, for reopening jobs, for reopening America, what that means. Because the Democrat media mob, the leftists in this country are working very hard to try to characterize anyone who suggests we need to get things back into place, we need to get ourselves back to work, that anyone who suggests that must be uncaring, doesn't care about grandma, doesn't care about old people, is selfish, is just wanting to selfishly get out of the house, they get to go eat at their favorite restaurants. The attitude of the protesters saying we've got to get back to work, we cannot languish any longer in this shelter in place, we can't do this forever. The thinking behind that kind of movement, the thinking behind the protests is being grotesquely mischaracterized by the Democrat media mob in this country. And I want to give voice today to what people are saying, why they're standing up for this idea. We have to get back to work in America. But very quickly, other states. So Texas, nothing impressive happening here. In fact, I think the only thing the governor said was, you could go to state parks, but which have been all closed, but you have to wear a mask and you have to honor social distancing unless you're walking with people you already live with. And so, I mean, honestly, it's nice to get out to parks, but that's not really what the problem was. It's no one can work. No businesses can function. And the other thing he said was we could open retail, but only drive by, pick up at the door. So, if all you can do is drive by and pick up at the door, so you're talking about, things that you don't need to try on, look at, you can order that from Amazon. Sorry, this is a zero consequence benefit that the governor announced, saying that, yeah, you can you can go to a store and they can come out the door and hand you what you want. This is nothing like actually restoring Texas. Nothing like actually restoring Texas. But other states have done more, a lot more. Georgia has announced reopening. Georgia is doing great. Tennessee is announcing actual moving forward, opening things up. South Carolina. So states are starting to do it, but I really think it's incumbent on freedom lovers, America lovers, to view this as a political issue requiring your activism, whether you're the type who goes to protests and waves signs, or you're the type who writes letters, makes calls, sends emails, even within your community. There needs to be pressure on officials to open up our country again for the survival of America. And I do not say that. It is not some, grand exaggeration, not hyperbole. It is for the survival of America. the very survival of our country as a free country. The left, as I mentioned yesterday in the show, is using this crisis to expand its power, to create more dependency in this country, to inspire people to think the best I can do is stay home and wait for my next check from the government. This is what the left is doing. This entire crisis plays right into the hands of the leftists in this country, and elected officials still being threatened, bandied about, and fearful by models that turned out to be grossly inaccurate. It seems like it didn't even matter to them that the models turned out to be completely wrong. But you have pressure on government from those people fearful about the virus, saying that, look at these models and they could change tomorrow. The numbers could go back up. They need to feel the pressure of the American people saying, no, we want to get back to work. We want to get back to living again. We can do that responsibly. We can do both. We can care for people who need it, protect the vulnerable, and free the healthy working people to go back to work. And that, my friends, is today's First Five. I've been trying to think about, I do a lot of political conversation and just very politically active, and end up hearing a lot of input, even from some people who, on all sorts of range across the political aisle, and even within, on the conservative side, people who have different views about where we are, what we should do, and people who are, more concerned about the virus in terms of how we protect the vulnerable. I will say this. If you are a senior, and so you're not, you're in the vulnerable class of people, if you are have any kind of immunity challenge, whatever your challenges are, everyone who is vulnerable should stay home. We should protect people. We should encourage people to think of themselves as protected. If you are in the vulnerable category for whatever reason, you can stay home. And you should stay home, and everyone encourages you to stay home. And if we succeed in reopening this economy, if we succeed in moving more quickly past this glacial pace and we reopen it, you can still stay home. Everyone who is concerned and frightened, and I'm not mocking being concerned and frightened. There are people who should be especially cautious. I understand that. You should stay home. Nothing about reopening America is saying force people who are vulnerable to get out and get sick. No one is saying that. The vulnerable should stay home. But on the human cost of the shutdown, I'm just surprised, really, in the course of this, watching how the coronavirus has worked through our society, and then the political thinking, then the cultural thinking, the social media conversation, how many people mock the idea of trying to put pressure on and trying to bring about the reopening of America, the reopening of the economy, how people who are pushing for that are characterized as selfish, as just wanting to get out and go shopping again at their favorite department store or other, cavalier, frivolous things. And so the thinking of people who are saying we've got to reopen America is mocked, ridiculed, and diminished as selfish people who can't stand the idea of being a little bit selfless and staying home for the benefit of others, and that just can't wait to get out of their house to go to their country club again or some stupid thing like that. That is not what the protesters are saying. And one way to help make clear what the protesters are saying is to talk with you, and for you to talk to your friends about what the human cost of the shutdown really means. And what that human cost, I want to just run through some of the things. Number one, and I said it yesterday and I'll say it today, if you don't understand that the American left is using this crisis, is using the coronavirus crisis and the economic shutdown of America to gain political power, to bring about the defeat of Donald Trump in November, to eviscerate all of the great advances America made in the first 3 years under President Trump, then you do not understand the American left. They are using this crisis, and you've got to understand that so you don't get lulled in and pushed around by their arguments. So I'll start with Ezekiel Emanuel. We talked about him last week. He's just He is Rahm Emanuel's brother. He was one of the architects of Obamacare. He was one of the ones who advocated under Obamacare that people, when they turn a certain age, I think he said 75, they should stop getting medical care. They should only seek palliative care because we don't have enough medical care to go around. So you senior citizens, suck it up, get sick, and die. That was his message. No exaggeration. I mean, he tried to use nicer words, but he said 75-year-olds and older shouldn't get medical care except for painkillers. This is the kind of dark mindset he has. Ezekiel Emanuel also recently talked about we probably have to have a 12 to 18 month shutdown of this country to wait until the coronavirus vaccine is ready. People, this is not hyperbole. There won't be an America if we shut down. America will be nothing like you know it if we shut down for 12 to 18 months. Yet this is what a pillar of the Democrat Party, Ezekiel Emanuel, clearly pillar of the Democrat Party, this is where he stands. This is what he was saying. So he also talked about the idea that so we have to shut down, in his view, religious services, no livelihoods, no getting out there except for essential businesses. This is what he is suggesting. And he said he's using coronavirus as a great, or COVID-19 as a great argument for universal health care coverage. You have to understand, people, this is a political, wow, I thought of a way, I found a mission, I found a way that we can get America under the control of the Democrat Party, because we are going to, as the Democrat Party, we are going to seize on this danger to America of the COVID virus and simply reduce it to a nation of people frozen in their homes, afraid to work, unable to work, cannot function. Okay, sorry. So then the next, so that is just overall. And then I really want to go through the way that this COVID virus is going to, this prolonged shutdown, what it really will do to America, in addition to that gives the left power. For example, we have already the idea, not just the idea in the abstract, I'll give you numbers in a moment, tens of thousands of deaths, with spikes in the rates of suicide, heart attacks, missed cancer diagnoses, domestic violence. But let me go through some particulars about that. A suicide spike, as an example. We already had a suicide crisis in our country before coronavirus came along. In Taiwan, which I was going to say the country of Taiwan, it's not that China thinks of them, but anyway, in Taiwan, there's been a 10% increase in the unemployment rate, which yielded approximately 30,000 suicides annually. That was a study. I'm sorry, this was not related to coronavirus, but in Taiwan, they had a study showing that 10% increase in the unemployment rate yielded approximately 30,000 suicides annually. We already had an epidemic in this country. We had nearly 50,000 Americans taking their lives, and we had an additional 1.4 million attempting to do so just in 2018. However, in the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis estimates over 52 million people will be laid off. 52 million people will be laid off just by the second quarter of 2020, getting us to a 32.1% unemployment rate. This is where we're headed with this coronavirus shutdown. Get these numbers again. You had small numbers of unemployment rises giving rise to suicide. Here's what the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis estimates. 52 million people will be laid off just by the second quarter of 2020, getting us to a 32.1 unemployment rate, worse than the Great Depression. Worse unemployment rate than the Great Depression. This is what will happen if we continue on this present course. The Great Depression, they estimate unemployment was like 20 to 25%. Understand the amount of suicides we're going to have in this country. They just go together, from people losing a sense of purpose and also just having a sense of futility, hopelessness, no way out, can't go to work, aren't any jobs, can't make my income, can't get a paycheck, can't pay for my life, can't take care of my family. This is where we are headed in this virus if we continue this shutdown of America. Similarly, a few weeks after lockdown in Los Angeles, calls to crisis hotlines increased from 1,000 to 25,000 a day in the state of Indiana. Let me say that number again. Just in the few weeks after lockdown, calls to crisis hotlines, people, all sorts of crises. My husband's going crazy. I'm depressed. We've got a huge problem on our hands. Crisis hotlines from 1,000 to 25,000 a day in Indiana, and an increase of 8,900%. 8,900% in Los Angeles. Also, plenty of reason, expectations of increases in heart attacks. We also had in this crisis, because we immediately went to elimination or delay of all non-emergency surgery, delay of all elective surgery. I couldn't believe, one of my friend who's a state senator here in Texas, sent me an email explaining what that means in terms of whose surgery is considered elective. We're talking about people with brain tumors. We're talking about people with cervical cancer. These were considered elective in this shutdown motivated elimination of the right to pursue surgery, to get surgery you need for actual problematic vital health conditions. So we had routine cancer screenings delayed, missed cancer diagnosis, cancer with routine screening, including breast cancer, all sorts of things. All of that is the human pain and harm flowing from the shutdown, flowing from our decision to so prioritize COVID-19 based on the completely false models that we had, that we actually got to the point that we canceled surgery for people who truly actually needed it. We have domestic violence spikes in this country already because of home confinement. People make jokes about getting along with my husband now that we're home all day every day. We don't have that problem. I'm very blessed in our home. My husband and I both work out of our home. We're used to both being home. But people who are used to having the husband or the wife or both out for the day, and now everybody's home all day and everybody's stressed and nobody has a paycheck and nobody has anything to do. They can't go to work. If they can't work from home, they can't work. Stress at home. So these are the real consequences. There's already been, as one example, a women's shelter in Dallas-Fort Worth region fielding an increase of extreme violent calls that are COVID-19 related already in Dallas, in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. We've seen, as of March 22nd, North Texas, a spike in severe child abuse cases, including death. I know that child abuse happens all year long. Sadly, wish it never happened anywhere, but there's a spike. Again, the tension created by this policy of shut down America forever is actually hurting families and children. And I tell you this, folks, this whole mesmerism our society has been under, this mesmerism that says, we can't deal with anything else. Everything else is pushed aside. We can't worry about the economy, jobs, the ability of people to earn a paycheck, to take the money home, to put food in the family table. None of that matters, because this COVID-19 thing must be the only thing we think about. And even after, weeks later, what we discovered, the numbers were wrong, the models were wrong, our behavior hasn't changed. The behavior of elected officials has not changed. Most elected officials. Their behavior has not changed. Their willingness to adapt their policies to the present circumstances has not happened. I'll tell you another thing in this segment, talking about just the human cost of this shutdown. And not just people losing jobs and people becoming, having a terribly hard time at home, and domestic violence and health issues and suicides and violence toward children and spouses. All of that is flowing from this. But on top of that, we're losing something precious about our culture. We're losing something precious about our sense of identity as Americans, our compassion for each other. And this is, again, something the leftists are trying to say, that protesters who want to fight for the right and the idea of America reopening, going back to work, protesters are accused of not caring. Protesters are accused of not caring, of not being considerate enough for the people suffering from COVID-19 or their family members or the healthcare workers or all the people whose lives revolve around providing care for people suffering. And that is a complete lie. Another lie the left engages in, that the only way you'd protest, the only reason you'd protest, the only kind of person you must be if you protest is someone who doesn't care about the suffering. Look, my friends, everybody cares. Everybody cares. I have a close political colleague whose adult nurse daughter in New York City is suffering with COVID-19 and her friends. I have a close friend from I've had for practically my whole life, whose father lost his best friend to COVID-19. Everybody's touched by it. Everybody understands it's horrible. You can understand it's horrible and still figure out that we can't kill America as a result of the virus. What we are doing with this shutdown is killing America. We can't kill America because of the virus. We can protect the people who need it. We can get them the supplies they need, and we can bring America back to working. But I want to talk again. I mean, this, the whole way the media, the left has handled this issue is very typical of the left, which is instead of to talk about the substance of the issue, is to mock and ridicule and attack people who dare to not agree with their agenda. And in this case, again, I tell you, you've got to see this. The Democrat media mob in this country, the leftists in this country, see this virus and the economic meltdown it has caused as a political weapon to use against conservatives. They want the shutdown to last longer because they see the shutdown is causing fear, is causing poverty in America, is causing doubt in America. They want those things because that is the basis of the Democrat Party's ability to win elections, is to tell people, to encourage people to think of themselves as helpless, as unable to ever take care of themselves, as people who are just lost and forlorn, whose only possible path forward in life is to vote for Democrats so they'll send you more money once a month. This is how the Democrat mindset works. The Democrat mindset wants to cultivate dependency, and on top of that, they want to use this crisis and perpetuate the harm to the American economy because they see that hurts President Trump and his re-election chances. They, the Democrats, were looking at the fall of 2020 and realized they had no chance on this planet Earth of having whoever their candidate was defeat Donald Trump because the economy was so strong, because the American spirit was so strong, because we were restoring America first and America's greatness. There was a sense of pride and joy about this country that had not been around for decades. Democrats saw this and they realized they were in trouble. Now, to be clear, the Democrats did not cause the coronavirus. The Chinese did. The Chinese caused the virus. They had to be held accountable, as you heard yesterday on my show with Gordon Chang. They have to be held accountable. But the way the virus is being treated in public policy in this country is aiding and abetting the Democrats in this country. I want to tell you, though, again, a few more things on this topic about how are in human terms, how we've been hurt by this whole crisis. We have people turning against each other. We have neighborhoods where people are calling the police, and they're encouraged by their elected officials to call the police because somebody's outside in their yard without their mask on, because someone left the home and it seems like they've been going out too much and they're probably not going on essential errands, and so I'm going to tell on my neighbors. You've had pastors have church services shut down. You have parties, kids' birthday parties shut down by the police. You've had a woman driving by herself with no one she could possibly infect, stopped and arrested for being out of her house. We have not just shut down the economy, we've shut down a sense of normalcy and decency in the way we treat our fellow citizens and the way that police and other officials treat citizens. We're normalizing a police state mindset in this country. We're normalizing, legitimizing the idea that a mayor would send his officials over to a parking lot on Easter Sunday for when a church service is being conducted with people sitting in their cars who could not possibly be transmitting the coronavirus to the next car over, which has to be at least 6 feet away. You had a mayor going there, or his underlings going there, writing down license plates to report these people and fine them for going to church on Easter Sunday. These are crazy level things happening in this country. We've been over so many of these things so many times on my show, but I want to point out, force yourself to think. A year ago, if someone told you that a mayor would be in the parking lot of a church on Easter Sunday, writing down the license plates of parishioners to fine them for going to church and staying in the car Easter Sunday. You would say, what, is this happening in China? China might happen, that could happen in America. We have in a rapid period of time, whatever you want to call it, 4, 6, 8 weeks, we have begun to normalize police state conduct, normalize the idea of people snitching on each other, normalizing and legitimizing the idea of people tattling on each other to the police about whether they were outside without a mask on. Which, by the way, I will digress to one kind of funny story about this. You probably saw this story. In fact, I think I talked about it on Tuesday in this show, but I'm not sure I did, or maybe with Alan West, which was Tuesday. Anyway, so Mayor de Blasio in New York City had actually urged people in New York City, if you see people, he actually urged citizens, if you see people out in public and they're not honoring social distancing or they don't have masks on, take a video of them, video your fellow citizens, and turn them into the government. He gave out the number you could use to submit your video to tell on people you saw in public who were not honoring social distancing or didn't have masks on. And I have to say, a little bit of hat tip to the people of New York City and basically the American spirit. Temporarily, they had to shut this down, this thing that Mayor de Blasio set up, because he was overwhelmed with people sending in people making fun of what he was doing. So some were very serious accusations, calling him Hitler, which I don't really like anyone being called Hitler. I think that's, even for Mayor de Blasio, that's a little extreme. But I mean, calling him Hitler, putting in videos that were completely inappropriate, just mocking him, little memes. I mean, the point is the system he set up was overwhelmed by people essentially protesting what he had said to do, protesting, saying, are you freaking kidding me? You're telling New York City people to turn each other in. And right here in Dallas County, we have our own county judge, highest elected official in Dallas County. He put out a tweet weeks ago, right after this whole thing got started, with a shutdown of Dallas, encouraging people to turn in their neighbors. This, my friends, is the destruction of American culture. The destruction of a culture that is just America's abundantly full and overflowing with people who are full of goodness and kindness and generosity and taking care of each other. It is the American spirit that's always been here. And the reaction to the virus and what the left is doing, using the virus to turn Americans against each other, is something we all need to call out and reject. We have to start questioning too. And this is the human cost. Again, we're in this segment about human cost of this virus. I ask you seriously, if where you live, if the government said, you know what, now that we've listened to Zeke Emanuel, and he's the guru of Obamacare, and he's saying, everyone should stay home for 12 to 18 months, and until we have a virus, until we have a vaccine, and we'll let you know when the vaccine's ready. Would you do that? Would you say, okay, 12 to 18 months, I'm going to, whatever the average lifespan is, it's 80 or whatever it is, I don't even know what it is, 75 or 80, so what are 18 months? I'll stay home the whole time. I'll do that. Or if someone said to you, hey, you know what? If you would like to go to a guaranteed virus-free camp, would you agree to leave your home, get on the bus, get on the train, get shipped off to a place you can be promised perfect safety from a virus for 12 to 18 months or for the rest of your life? Would you do that? Would you? Would your friends? Would your friends who are so concerned about this virus? Because I have to tell you, folks, this is the kind of thinking we need to do to help Americans wake up. We have never lived in this country, in any place in the world, we have never lived in a virus-free world. We never will. We never will have a country, a place where we are simply completely free of all viruses. Viruses, sadly, are a part of life. There are something like, and I talked about in the show yesterday, 219 species of viruses which are dangerous to mammals, to humans. So there are endless species. They discover 3 or 4 new ones every year. And then within those species, there are all sorts of undiscovered viruses that can hurt mammals, can hurt people, humans. This is life on the planet Earth. You can't at the same time recognize coronavirus is serious. We have to protect the people. We have to protect, I keep saying it, the healthcare workers, the patients, the families. We can protect those people, but we cannot agree to become a society that insists on staying home to stay safe until someone tells us it's okay to go outside again. There is no such thing as a virus-free world, a virus-free America. We have to encourage research to understand the viruses, to understand medications that might help people who have contracted viruses, develop medications to help, develop vaccines, but we cannot become a society timid and cowering and staying in our homes until someone like Dr. Fauci tells us we can be safe. That's not life. What you will be doing, staying at home until Fauci or someone else tells you you're safe, Ezekiel Emanuel, that's not life. And there are Americans who are protesters who understand this, that life is not simply locating a place where you are 100% sure of being free of any virus. No such place exists. And the people who are protesting are not protesting the shutdown. They're not demanding the reopening of America because they selfishly want to go to the spa and get a massage, or because they want to go to their favorite store and spend money on clothes, or because they want to dine out in their favorite restaurants. They may want all those things, but what they really want is the return of the normalcy of the American culture of freedom and entrepreneurship and working, and the robust, active America that we were all living in even in January of this year. We're only in April. If you can force yourself to go back to January this year, where the news of the robust economy and the hope, our country was brimming with hope, that because we had people who had not worked in the longest time working. We had the lowest unemployment rates for all sorts of categories of people in decades, and in some categories forever. We had activity. We had a robust country. This is why people are protesting, because they can see that the virus has hurt more than just a particular little job they had or a particular company they knew about. That our country's policy choices in dealing with the virus, in trying to prevent the spread of the virus, has resulted in the destruction, the devastation of the American economy. And because these people understand that the destruction of the American economy is not just about greedy, rich corporations not being able to make quite as much money this year, it's about bringing about human suffering. The destruction of the economy brings human suffering. People lose a sense of purpose, of identity, of a path forward, of a place to be in life, a place to give value to the economy, to purchase in the economy what they want to, because they have worked and earned, they have been rewarded for their labors, and they want to be able to provide for their family themselves. That is what the human cost is, the human evaluation is of how we're dealing with this economy and how we're dealing with this shutdown, and how badly this shutdown has really worked away at the fabric of America. That's where we are, and that's why people are protesting. I will tell you, I went to a protest in Dallas this week on Tuesday. There was a protest outside our county commissioner's court where, I don't even know, 75, 100 people the most. And basically it was these are people, I knew not all of them, I knew some of them, but they were people these are not people who are starving and can't figure out the way to get the next paycheck. These are all people, at least the ones I knew, who've been fairly successful in life, who actually they could stay home during this virus and not be harmed. They could pay their mortgage, pay their rent, keep food on the table. They could live their lives. They're not there protesting on their own behalf. They're there protesting on behalf of the lesser among us, the people who are not able to comfortably ride out this shutdown. The people who actually rely on their paycheck, their weekly paycheck, to get their bills paid, to put food on the table. The people that protest all understand the things I was just talking with you about. They understand the human cost in a shutdown. They understand the damage to the culture and the fabric of America through this shutdown. They understand that people are suffering. They're there on behalf of other people who are far less able to weather this shutdown than they are. They do not deserve the ridicule and mocking coming from the Democrat media mob, who spend all their time trying to characterize the reopen economy protesters as selfish. These, my friends, are about the least selfish people among us. They could live home, they could stay at home, and they wouldn't have to go out at all. They could have food delivered safely to their door. They could stay in their house, watch Netflix, have plenty of food on hand and lounge around until someone announces we're free. But they have the fighting, patriotic love of America spirit. And that is really what's driving this protest that the left is trying so hard to mock and ridicule. And the last thing for today, I want to just hit a story. I called it Virus in America, Were We Duped? And I know we've been talking a lot about this, how the models didn't play out, that you had models from all sorts of left-wing places in this country. You had the COVID Act Now models, which really was the first one I saw out that was driving my own, where I live, Dallas County, Texas, was driving decisions by people, elected officials all over this country at the state level, Georgia, Tennessee, all over this country. This group, COVID Act Now, just one group, but made up of leftists, Hillary Clinton supporting leftists who were already working to defeat Donald Trump. They came up with these models grotesquely exaggerating the number of likely deaths in this country. They came up with the models that were the impetus for what we are doing now in Dallas County, which is still staying home all the time and still waiting to be told if in the month of May we're allowed to get out of our houses. But this model, COVID Act Now, is just one of them. There were many others. We've talked about them on the show. This isn't really the point of this segment, but there are many models. In fact, the one I do want to mention was the one that came out of England that drove so much of the decision-making, even the decision-making in Washington. At the start of this awareness of the virus, these models that were put together by this gentleman in England. I talked to him in a previous show. I don't have his name at the tip of my tongue, but he was a doctor who has previously put out, I think it's Neil Ferguson, but has previously put out ridiculously inaccurate models in other disease scenarios, put out ridiculously inaccurate assessments and projections of deaths from this virus this time. And those projections drove the policies we embrace as a country to fight the virus. But I want to back up even further. President Trump said recently that when he was talking about where we are with this virus, how we're doing with this virus and dealing with it in this country, President Trump said that he had 2 people come into his office. He's talking about the start of how we got going in creating the policy around the virus. President Trump said he had 2 people come in his office. He didn't name them in his announcement, but later someone else said it was Drs. Fauci and Birx. And the 2 of them came in his office and said, essentially, we have a major problem with this virus out of China. You could have somewhere between 1.5 and 2.2 million Americans die of this virus if you don't take action immediately. And so you have to put yourselves, I'll put myself in President Trump's shoes. He's not a doctor. He's not an immunologist. He's not a virologist. He hasn't studied this area, I would assume, in any detail in his life. So these 2 experts come and tell him this. So when you, and they have acknowledged that they were looking at the numbers that came out of this, I believe his name is Ferguson, in England. So they're looking at those numbers. Okay, what I want to get to in this whole segment is this. Let's assume the complete good faith of Doctors Birx and Fauci. Let's assume no ulterior motive, no alternative agenda. They saw these numbers coming out of England, and they saw maybe other numbers. You had numbers at the University of Washington very early on projecting horrific death in this country. And so they jumped into action and said, you know what, given this, we have to figure out how are we going to protect the American people from this problem. So they said, well, you know, a big thing is social distancing. Obviously, they want to prevent the virus from spreading. So social distancing, wearing masks, washing your hands frequently, wiping down all sorts of surfaces in public places, in your home, everywhere, sanitizing everything in sight repeatedly. It was an effort to stop and kill the virus before, you can't end the virus, but to kill the virus sitting on surfaces or on your hands as frequently as you could, wearing masks, all that kind of stuff. So let's assume they're good faith. They decided, the best way is to have what they chose, which is now we've been talking about in the show, horizontal interdiction, which is not the only way we could have gone, but the way we did. Horizontal interdiction means forcing every single person in the country to stay at home. Forcing them all to stay at home. That's what we have to do. That was the idea. The only choice they made was everybody freezes in place. We have shelter in place. So we have social distancing. You can't be near anybody, masks, all of that. So let's assume they're good faith. But we are now past the middle of April. We don't have anything like those numbers that were projected in any of those early models, nothing like that. The hotspot problem of New York City, which is huge and is tragic and we need to care for those people in every way. And we are trying as a country to do that. We're trying everything we can think of. But the problem in New York City was uniquely driven by having the international airport there receiving direct flights from Wuhan, China. Virus starts in China, coming over here, it flies in and out of Wuhan into New York City. You had the amazing, as I said, they live on top of each other. New York City is a high density population city, and that's why a lot of people love it. But there are a lot of people living close to each other. They had the subways open a long, long time, so people are continuing to pass the virus in these packed subways. If you've ever ridden the New York City subways, I actually think subways are really fun. I kind of like them. In law school in Washington, I used them. I thought it was really fun. But subways are breeding grounds. They're full of people who are, pre-mask are getting on the subway and breathing all over each other. So New York City quickly developed a major problem. But getting to my point of this segment about were we duped was okay, even if assuming that everyone meant well. The English gentleman, the doctor from England who came up with the extremely inaccurate assessments and projections, University of Washington, even COVID Act now. Suppose all these people meant well. We still are at a place where the numbers didn't bear out, where we have a 98% survival rate of people who come into contact, who are infected with the coronavirus, 98% recovery rate. We have more people in this country than we knew have already developed the antibodies, meaning they contracted coronavirus, didn't even get sick enough to go to the doctor, thought they just had a bad cold or a flu, waited it out like most people do with most viruses. You wait it out, you stay in bed, you drink chicken soup, watch television, sleep, and then it goes away. And when people did that, we have developed herd immunity in this country in a much larger segment of people than we thought. So we have false numbers we relied on. We have the amazing and wonderful survival rate, 98% survival rate. We have more people who have antibodies, who have the herd immunity in our country. We have the New York City now understood better as uniquely troubled hotspot for coronavirus. But we don't have to see and agree that what happened in New York City has to be replicated everywhere else. There were unique factors. We didn't understand what was happening with the flights back and forth of Wuhan. We had a lot of contagion passing in New York City before we were on top of the problem. I'm getting at the idea that even now, past the middle of April, we're into April 23rd, I think the date is today, April 23rd. So we're at that date, and it could be time, in fact, it is time in this country to more openly say, you know what? We want to protect our people. We will protect the vulnerable, the susceptible, the elderly, the people who have, for whatever reason, immune deficiencies of any kind, people who are, whatever reason, are at unique threat from this virus. But we can change course in how we respond to it. We can have America change course. We can say, we got duped by bad data. We got, overwhelmed with what we saw happen in Wuhan, which is its own set of unique factors, including what we learned yesterday in the show with Gordon Chang. It appears now almost surely that this did not come from wet markets, as the Chinese government was hoping people will believe, but actually came from one of the Wuhan bioweapons labs, whether it was a natural virus or a bioweapon virus, whether it accidentally leaked or intentionally leaked, and how long the Chinese, wherever it came from China. We in America got on board with a response to protect our people, but we've got to not just get America back moving, we've got to acknowledge that to a certain extent, we were duped. We were misled. We made a mistake. We overreacted. We can restore the American economy carefully, honoring the kind of things we need to do to protect people, protecting the vulnerable. We can get this country back to work. And part of getting the mental mindset to get there is the acknowledgement that, you know what, we got bad data at the start. We got duped by bad data. We took action based on bad data. We put policies in place based on bad data. And it's okay for us at this point to acknowledge we got bad data, but we're not willing to lose our country over it. We're not willing to lose the American dream, the beauty of freedom in America, which we have grotesquely surrendered during this time. We have lost American freedom. We've lost a sense of liberty. We've lost the culture, turning each other in, and government officials encouraging people to turn each other in. We've damaged our country enough. We've damaged our country enough in the economy. We've got to have priority one, protect people and provide for the care providers, make sure they have what they want. And the very next priority is bring America back. Bring America back. Bring America back to work. Get rid of this insane spending out of Washington. End it. Make clear that we're not going to become a country where everybody sits home because it's easier to get another check from Washington than it is to get back to work or to get your business running again. We've got to acknowledge we got duped. We don't have to point fingers. I mean, we can point fingers at China, but instead of pointing fingers internally, which we may ultimately even do to some people in this country, question where they came up with their data, we've got to say to ourselves, okay, we reacted to this virus, we made some plans, we made a policy, and we didn't need to do that. It's actually okay for us to say at this point, we're going to move forward. We're going to move forward. We're going to stop this effort to shut down the entire economy in this country because of this virus. We cannot surrender our country, its future, its liberty, its prosperity, its place in the world to this virus. We can get Americans back to work. That's the message of the protesters. And it's not because they selfishly want something for themselves. It's because they know how great our country is. They know how badly it's been damaged by the policies we chose, by the shutdown America mindset. And they want to bring our precious country back. And that, my friends, is my show for today. What I do at the end of every show is turn and tell you and why the stories we talked about today matter to you. And so I'll tell you the stories we talked about today. We first have virus and the America's reopening in baby steps. I didn't really go over in this slide here. Texas not leading. I could talk more about that, but a few southern states are moving. Georgia's taking the lead. Texas is not leading. Governors are acting tentative and cautious, not reflective of the spirit of the people. Many still paralyzed by fear. State parks are open with masks, Retail shopping, pickup only. You know what? You might as well order from Amazon if that's the case. A tentative and cautious approach to reopening assures continued economic stagnation and growing devastation. Reopening must be accelerated. America is paying a horrible price for what appears to be at best a horrendous misdiagnosis and overreaction. The complete shutdown was not warranted. It was panic-induced. President Trump must do more to diffuse the fear. And I think you ought to consider admitting that the federal government mistakenly overreacted. And the virus and America, were we duped? Why it matters to you, President Trump did act responsibly and decisively after receiving the first medical expert advice. But the experts were not delivering sound advice. They would be fired in any other context. You think about that. If you brought numbers like that in any other realm of business, that far off, you probably wouldn't have a job. The predictive models of cases and mortality have been wildly off, not even close. Presumptions of virus timing, origin were disproved by the presence of antibodies, commonality of infection curve among many nations, and consistency with historical patterns with other viruses. All of this disputes the uniqueness of COVID-19. New York-centric mainstream media coverage has massively distorted the national picture. Recovery rates and drug treatments dispute vaccine as the be-all and end-all focus, and common knowledge there are 320,000 viruses awaiting discovery. This is fact from experts, from data I shared in the show yesterday. 320,000 viruses are still awaiting discovery. This, my friends, is just life on Earth. 93% of Americans are living under restrictions, and the elites don't care. They still get their paychecks, not like the people that they are governing who don't get their paychecks. The elites get their paychecks. This is ridiculous, an overreaction. The shutdown must end. I'll tell you one more idea I have, folks, on wrapping up the show today. I really think if you're doing anything protest in your area, if you're talking to your elected officials, emailing them, you ought to suggest for all of the people who are participating in perpetuating the shutdown in this country that is depriving Americans of their paychecks, the officials issuing those policies ought to not get their paychecks either. I think it would dawn on them more in a real life way what it means when someone takes away your paycheck. Because right now they are issuing policies, shutting down economies, shutting down our country, shutting down jobs in their jurisdictions, and actually nothing changes for them. Nothing changes. Maybe the American people have to help them see how what they are doing is truly harming their very constituents. I'm Debbie Georgatos. This show is America Can We Talk? I do it Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Central Time. I love talking with you about preserving this precious, extraordinary experiment in human liberty, which is America, an experiment in liberty that is under direct assault today from the Democrat media mob, the many, many people on the radical left in this country who are benefiting from the shutdown, who see the shutdown as their opportunity to regain the White House in 2020, to regain political power in 2020. Don't let them do it. And please tune in every day to my show where I talk about America and why it is so great. I talk about America because America matters. And I'll talk to you next time.
Can we talk? Truth about America.